Hi everybody, Colleen here from Authentic Pathways. I wanted to do a video today about what to look for when you buy an oracle deck. When you buy a tarot deck, you know that the structure is always going to be the same, and how you work with the deck is more or less always the same. But there are so many different types of oracle decks out there, and I know personally for me, when I first started, I was a little bit disappointed when I got some decks when I was expecting to use it in a certain way and realized I couldn't. So I thought perhaps I would just share some tips on what to look for. I would like to do a video at a later stage about testing your deck's purpose depending on the type of question you ask. It's a little bit more in detail, which will follow on from today's, but I'll leave that for another video because I like these videos to be short and sweet. Right, so some oracle decks will have single words on the cards, and some will have phrases, and the phrases, some will just be a bland phrase, I don't know, the sun is shining, and some phrases will be instructions or guidance. So it all depends on what you are looking for in a deck. If I'm looking for advice from a deck, and I'm looking for help, for guidance, and I use a deck that just gives me one word, that might not give me enough information to answer my question, and it might not give me the guidance that I'm looking for. So for instance, I have a couple of decks here in front of me, which I'm just going to show you the difference. So let's just say something like, let's think of a question. How can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? I have no idea why that popped into my head. So clearly that's something for somebody, or maybe me, I don't know. So how can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? So there I'm looking for guidance. I'm looking for advice on how I can do that, on the steps that I need to take. If I have a deck that just gives me one word, for instance, so the first 4 cards I just went past would probably have been an answer. But let's just say, okay, how can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? And I pulled the card, and the card says that. Now, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with this deck. It's one of my favorite decks, which is why I've picked it here today. It's just not the right deck for this particular question. Why? Because the word abundance, as much as it sounds wonderful, is not giving me any idea about how I can go from where I am now through the word abundance to fulfilling my spiritual destiny. There's no guidance there. So there are decks that have just one word that are not great at giving advice or guidance. So this deck, for instance, passion, beauty, strength, activity, discovery, reflection, joy, purpose. They're great words, and they're great words for use in other readings, but not when you're looking for guidance. So let's try another deck. Just incidentally, that was the Nature's Gift Guidance cards by Kristen from OTM_Academy on Instagram. I have lots of her decks. My goal is to have all of them one day. Right, so the next deck I'm going to use is Nature's Whispers. Where's the box? Nature's Whispers. So this is Nature's Whispers. Absolutely stunning, beautiful artwork. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But I'm not going to let you see the artwork yet because we need to. So how I'm going to fulfill my spiritual destiny. So this deck is a collection of single words, or a few words. I know there are single words. There's contemplation, there's intuition, illumination, but there's also some that are a few words. So celebrate differences. No, that's a single word, Colleen. Show your support, hope and happiness. So just to go back, so there's some that are single words. So here you can see the artwork now. Absolutely stunning. So adventure, assurance, pause, illumination. Now, beautiful cards and really deep words, but again, I'm not getting that guidance that I'm looking for. You know, maybe if these were used in conjunction with other cards, perhaps, but that on its own is not giving me the guidance that I'm looking for. So then you have the ones that are a few words. I'm just quickly going to separate them. So here, hope and happiness. So that's not one word now. We've got a little bit more to go on. Hope and happiness, infinite blessings, or gratitude and appreciation. But still, there's no instruction there. There's no guidance. A little bit more than the one word, but still not quite getting there. And even though these, well, they're not quite phrases. They're just more than one word. And then you have others, which now you can see we're getting to instruction or advice. So here, make a decision. There we go. So how can I fulfill my spiritual journey? Make a decision. Okay, so that's more like answering the question now. Here, let love be your beacon. They're such beautiful cards. Amplify your positive emotions. These are instructions. This is guidance. This is a little bit more to go on than just, you know, abundance, illumination, positivity. It's just, you know, there's not much to go on. So you have some decks that have a multiple of different types of, so there's words, one word, sometimes there's more than one word, and sometimes there's instruction. So this particular deck, if I was working with this deck and I was looking for instruction, I'd have to go through the deck and take out all the ones that provided the guidance and advice, and take out all the ones that were just sort of one or two words that weren't, you know, might be providing extra detail but weren't actually giving me the advice. And then I would take the pile of cards that were giving advice and I would just use those, which seems a bit of a shame, but you know, hey ho. So then you have some decks, and this is the Energy Oracle cards. That, for me, are just plain weird. I just can't get on with them at all. So, sticking to our original question, how can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? The garden and the gate. Nope. I'm not seeing the guidance there. I'm not seeing it. So this deck is a combination, Magician and the Mirror. Nope, that's not answering my question. So this deck is a combination of single words and phrases. And whilst I don't think I've ever actually thrown a deck away or given a deck away, because I always keep it because it always pops up at some time when I need that deck for something. I'm still waiting for this deck's time. It's just very strange for me. Every card that I picked from this deck, I would have to read the little book, and I don't always like reading the book. I like to use my intuition. I like to look at a picture and see where my feeling goes for that picture. And to sit and have to keep reading the book every time I pull up, I mean, what does the thinking man mean? What does that mean? How is that going to help me? I mean, yes, I can see rest and rejuvenation. Okay, that's nice. How can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? Rest and rejuvenation, that makes sense. But some of these are not, they're very bizarre. So some decks have like a theme. I mean, Colette Baron Reed, if you've heard of her, she has a few decks which are also lovely, but they have a kind of theme to the deck, and it's almost like you have to learn about that theme first before you can use the deck. And then I'm like, I can't be asked with that. So yeah, so some decks are just, they seem to have their own little world and their own little energy, and they might not be great for answering questions in great detail. Then you have some decks which are yes/no decks. Now, if you watched my previous video on the importance of having a question in card reading, you will see there that I said, you know, when you've got a deck of 40 to 70 cards, depending on whether you're dealing with oracle decks or tarot cards, there is a humongous amount of wisdom which can be attained from those decks, and to ask it a yes/no question just seems to be an insult. You know, imagine you've climbed a mountain for days and you've gone through all these hardships to get to the peak of that mountain to meet this all-knowing oracle, and this oracle's sitting there and you can ask it anything, and you ask it a yes/no question. You know, will I marry my boyfriend? And the oracle goes, no. What have you learned? What have you learned? You've learned that you've climbed a bloody mountain for nothing. You know, yes/no questions are not sort of, you're not learning much from them. So I'm not a huge fan, and I think it's much nicer to have more detail to learn from it. So if you know you're not going to marry your boyfriend, you would like to understand why, so that you can, you know, handle the future a little bit better. Anyway, I digress. So this is the Angel Answers deck, and this is it's a yes/no deck. But if you imagine having a yes/no deck, it's going to be very, very boring, because it's going to have 2 cards. And this is 44 cards. So so you have different options. So here we go. So we have unlikely, it's up to you, take action, how can I fulfill my spiritual destiny, take action, how, what should I do, recovery, meditation brings answers, communicate clearly. So actually, I think that I was going to say there is a yes and a no and a maybe and an ask later and a, you know, those types of things. So there are yes/no decks, and if these are the types of answers that you are looking for, then you need a yes/no deck. But it's not going to give you a lot of information. So the last 2 that I have here in front of me are my 2 favorite decks, my go-tos for when I need advice and guidance, because they tell you to do something. Now that sounds a bit harsh, because at the end of the day, we all decide if we're going to do something. But if you're looking for guidance, you have the desire to be told what to do. So these 2 decks, this is the Oracle Everywhere, which is by the same lady who does the Nature's Gift guidance cards. Whoops. Kristen over at OTM_Academy on Instagram. It's a fantastic deck. I don't know how many cards are in here, but they each have a picture on them, and they have an instruction, short and sweet, but an instruction. And this deck is the Messenger Oracle by Ravynne Phelan. Oops, I don't know where to get the focus. There we go, that's pretty much there. And it has beautiful artwork, some very, very kind of spiritual, nature-based, some a bit odd, but it's no problem because they're beautiful. And both of these decks have instructions. So going back to the question, how can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? The 2 cards just on the top of these 2 decks now have already given me a message. So how can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? Do nothing, but see the truth. So already there's something there. How can I fulfill my spiritual destiny? Seek your destiny. Yeah, so let me just, I'll tell you what, let's give it a shuffle and we'll just, so I'll pick that one and I'll just take one from the middle of the deck. So, oops. Detach and know your fears. Oh, sorry, that one is not quite focused. Know your fears. So it's instruction. Detach, you immediately know, and the word as well as the picture, you're getting a sense that you need to step away from things, maybe spend some time on your own, maybe some contemplation. You can see the man, he's looking out over the ocean, I think it is. You know, and you kind of get that sense that he's having a serious think about life. So he's detaching from kind of everyday worries and getting away from the norm to really do some soul searching. And then here you have know your fears. And when you put the two together, maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe he's having a good hard think about his fears and why they're stopping him from fulfilling his spiritual destiny. But can you see how the fact that there's advice on these cards means that you know where to start? If you were sitting still with this word abundance, you wouldn't know where to start. How do you get there? But here you know you have to detach and know your fears, or know your fears. So it's very important to understand the type of oracle deck that you are buying so that it suits the purposes that you are looking for. So if you want a deck that gives you instructions and a bit more information, it needs to have those types of phrases. And the easiest way to do this is to, you can look on the internet and you can see what a couple of the cards are. Quite often you can find scarily quite a few cards out of decks nowadays, and you can get a sense for the type of deck that it is. If you belong to a tarot or oracle card reading group, often people will buy new decks and they'll share a couple of photos so that people can get a sense of what type of deck it is. For me, I belong to a tarot group, and when people buy new decks, there's specific cards in a tarot deck that I need to relate to the picture. If the picture isn't right, then I tend to not gel with the deck so much. So I think there's 4 cards. So normally when people buy a new deck, I say, oh, can I see these 4 please? And then I know whether I'm going to gel with the deck or not. So don't be afraid to do that. If you're spending money on a deck, you need to understand, you need to know how you're going to relate to it. So quick summary. When you are using oracle cards, you are going to be asking different types of questions. If you are looking for information, if you are looking for advice or guidance, you're going to need a deck which gives you instructions. Some decks just give one word. Some decks give phrases which may or may not make sense. And some decks give yes, no and quick answers, but only some will give the advice and guidance. So make sure that you have a look online and see what those decks do before you buy them. Otherwise you will waste your buckaroos. Right, I will put the names and the creators of all the decks in the description field below, but I hope the videos helped. And if it has, sure, let me know. And I will see you again in the next video. Bye for now.